22 часа 28 минут. Масса...
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Touchdown, we have touchdown. Exit zone. Start Dragon deploy, verified.
So you totally heard about the thing where America, in order to beat Russia to the moon, was just going to blow up the moon. Could be way easier than actually landing humans on the moon.
Is that a real thing? We were actually going to... We thought we could blow up the moon?
Yeah. Yeah, just obliterate it. That way we would just, nobody, it's sort of one of those like, if I can't have you, nobody can kind of things.
Welcome to Spacevidcast. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham will be our hosts for this show. We're going to start off with some space news. Then we're going to go into our main topic, asking what is China doing? And then...
And we'll be talking about that for the next 3 months.
Kind of. We'll talk about the main topic. And then in the last part of the show, we normally do viewer comments, questions, interact with you guys. But this particular show, we're also going to be talking about some of what we want to do in 2013, some of our plans. So usually that's stuff for After Dark, so we're going to give you just a small taste of what we do in After Dark right here in the regular show. So
Not only that, but that's also the section where Carrie Ann hears about the crazy schemes Ben has been thinking up and not discussed with her at all.
Absolutely. But let's go ahead and get started with some space news. First off, Sabre engine. I love this. For anyone who
These
follows...
are the people who bought Dunder Mifflin, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, go on.
That's hilarious. No, the company is not Sabre. It's Reaction Engines.
Gotcha.
But they are working on a very hard problem, which is getting basically it's an engine that allows us to do something called single stage to orbit, which means I'm doing a terrible job explaining this. Traditionally, all right, I'm cutting back to me. Traditionally, in a rocket, you've got multiple stages.
Yes.
Right? So you lift off, and you've got your first stage, and that goes for the first couple of minutes.
Well, like on the space shuttle, you had the actual plane-looking part, and then you had the boosters on the side, and you had all of these different parts
exactly.
that kind of would end up falling away.
They would
and
fall
those
away.
are different stages,
They're
right?
different stages, that's correct. And you blow them away, you drop them back to Earth, because you don't want that extra weight to come up with you during ascent. So like a rocket, like a Falcon rocket or a Saturn V, Ariane, any rocket, you're going to see, after a couple minutes, the first stage falls away, the second stage ignites, it does its thing.
And for different rockets, it's different parts.
Exactly.
It's not all, right?
That's
and so
correct.
this would be no folly downy parts.
No folly downy parts, single stage to orbit, and highly reusable. The thing, single stage to orbit doesn't necessarily mean it will be cheaper, but it does mean if you build it correctly, you could kind of do it in a plane configuration, and that's what these guys are working on.
It's fully reusable because nothing comes down. Because usually when you expel those other stages, they fall down to Earth
and they die.
And they
go away, with the exception of the solid rocket boosters for the space shuttle.
Right, solid rocket, because they fall in the ocean, right? And so you
that's
had to
correct.
refurbish those every time.
Well, the external tank fell in the ocean too, but it burned up kind of. In this case, it's basically a space plane. So this plane launches like a plane, flies into space, can go to low Earth orbit, which is different than version galactic. It cannot go to low Earth orbit. That's suborbital only. I believe that's true. I believe
So
it
it goes
was
way
low Earth
higher.
orbit. It goes way higher.
That's cool.
And it's still a conceptual engine. So
Right.
basically the point of it is this engine. And they have now passed a couple of additional tests that prove that, yes, this is a real thing. We can actually do this. Now, there's a bunch of money being dropped into this. It's like $15 billion spent on this so far. But this could be, because I've talked about it many times on the show, this could be one of those game changers that changes the propulsion we get off of Earth to help get us out of our gravity well. And even if it can't bring a whole lot to low Earth orbit, if it can just bring a few humans and then we can, from there launch something else.
Just a few humans. Is there like a good reason why it's all curvy uppy like that?
Oh yeah, going back to the shot of the engine.
Just-
No, I have.
I mean, I'm clearly not a rocket scientist.
I have no
but
idea.
if anyone in the chat room can tell me what the thought process may be behind that, because that's not just like my imagination
No,
of looking at things. It does look a little
Curved.
right?
Yep. So I don't know. So the neat thing about this engine is it basically converts from an airplane engine to a rocket engine, and it just uses the same fuel to do that.
Nice.
So yeah, it's kind of like, oh well, not enough air, rocket. So I'm excited about the Sabre engine. And speaking of, so the space plane we were talking about, the Sabre engine from Reaction Engines, that engine can go into the space plane, which is called Skylon. That's the space plane plan. But they also announced something called LapCat. Check this out. So there is an Airbus A380, which is a freakishly huge plane. Now, I realize this isn't space. This part of the program isn't actually space, but
Right.
it was really cool, so we're going to talk about it anyhow.
Okay.
This is LapCat. This is basically, if you remember the Concorde,
They
which
know that lap cats are tiny, right? They fit on your lap.
I don't know. It's actually all capitalized, so I assume it stands for something.
Okay.
Check this out. So this uses the Sabre engines, and what it will do is allow Mach 5, that's 5 times the speed of sound, travel throughout the world. Now, most of that will likely be over the oceans. And that's what you're going to be able to use. Another use of this particular engine, the Sabre engine, going on this particular vehicle. I wish the...
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Kind
of insane.
It's really freaking fast, and B, the plane is huge. It can carry about 300 passengers, right? And obviously this is all just animation with no sound or anything like that. But yeah, this is some of the stuff that gets me excited about this, right? I mean, this is
Long-term advanced propulsion concepts and technologies. Thank you, USKO.
or LapCat.
Or LapCat.
So, and here you can see this particular flight plan that you're looking at right now with current air traffic would take about, I want to say it was 4.5 hours, somewhere around in there.
Nice.
So you can basically get around the planet, halfway around the planet in 4.5 hours. Yep.
Wow, and I can't even get from LA to San Francisco in that amount of time.
No, exactly. It takes 8 hours to do that particular trip. So that's why I'm personally excited about this, because technology like this can do quite a few really awesome things.
We really quickly, we do have some scientists in the chat room that are confirming that there are physics, I was going to say physical reasons, but there is physics reasoning behind the curved engine. And so it makes sense. It's just that at the moment, not at our fingertips. So
There you
that's
go.
good.
Yep.
Thank you.
So moving right along, Ariane, the European Space Agency, there was a bit of debating going on. There was some tweeting and talking back and forth about skipping the next generation Ariane, which is Ariane 5 ME, which is midlife evolution, and moving straight to the Ariane 6. And the European Space Agency had a lot of debate over this as to whether they were going to do it. And so they basically decided, let's do both. Here's where this all stems from. SpaceX is pushing the price of launch costs way down. I mean, they're doing things radically
Didn't Elon
different.
even say himself that 5 is kind of a stupid idea and really they should just go for 6?
Yes, he did. And because of this, a bunch of the incumbent space providers are worried.
Okay.
Right now, a good chunk of the satellite launches don't happen in the U.S. because U.S. launches are freakishly expensive.
Right.
So you go to ESA and you launch on an Ariane 5, or you whatever, you launch on some rocket somewhere. It doesn't have to be an Ariane, it could be a Vega, it could be whatever rocket they have.
Congratulations to Poland for becoming part of ESA, by the way.
Absolutely.
I'm quarter Pole, so yay.
Yay. So the point is they were going to kind of renovate the vehicle, add a little bit to it, kind of do this next extra second stage, and that was the midlife evolution or ME vehicle. And then a lot of people started saying, well, if we're going to do this, we need to come up with new manufacturing techniques. We need to keep the costs down. We need to crank these things out.
Right.
We should just move straight to Ariane 6. And they're doing both. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all works out. But yes, so now we get an Ariane 5 ME and an Ariane 6, and some of it will cross over, but that is the official plan from the European Space Agency. And speaking of the European Space Agency...
I usually look to ESA to say, hey, they're doing cool stuff, why aren't we doing cool stuff like them? And now apparently they're looking at us going, hey, they're making stupid decisions, why aren't we making stupid decisions like them?
I don't know, I'm not sure it's stupid. We'll see. The market will tell.
I guess.
So speaking of ESA... they're going to help drop some money into the Orion spacecraft from NASA. This is the multi-purpose crew. Wow, I've messed up my buttons. Crew vehicle. They're going to help fund some of that. And I remembered what they had funded, and now I don't. It was very specific items.
Okay.
It's $320 million worth of funding over 2 years. They're going to work on propulsion and power modules for the multi-purpose crew vehicle, or
Nice.
MPCV, or as I like to call it, just Orion, because that's way simpler. Right? So ESA will be part of that, and that's kind of an interesting, and you're going to see this in our commercial break as well, interesting idea that we really are kind of all coming together to do really cool things in space. It is a
Starfleet Alliance. That's what I'm saying.
Starfleet Alliance. So that's awesome.
Nanu.
Back in Europe, the European, I always say in European Space Observatory, it is the European Southern Observatory, ESO. They have basically helped find a rogue planet. This is a big deal for a couple of reasons. One, it's like, I can't believe they found this thing in the vastness of space. I mean, it's
really cool.
Insanely difficult to do. That's not just a little hard to do. It's really hard to do. This is a artist rendition. What you first saw would be visible light. This is infrared light. But yeah, they found this rogue planet, which kind of shows that you could have planets that aren't part of a system. And you could always have something get ejected, but we always thought that would be smaller items like asteroids and meteors.
Right.
This is an entire planet that's not part of a system. So yeah, darn rogue planets.
We can just adopt this one, right?
Adopt what?
Right? We can just bring it in our system. It could be our new Pluto.
It could be our new Pluto. we need a replacement for Pluto, so that's going to be the rogue planet.
Just come on over this way, sweetie.
Where's gravity? It's
all right.
As Random the Toaster says, to be fair, it is a huge planet. But you know what? To be super fair, the vastness of the cosmos dwarfs the size of this planet. So, I mean, I'm telling you, it's really hard to do. Just because it's a really huge planet doesn't mean you can just point the telescope and see it really quickly and easily. This stuff was freaking hard. So bonus points to them. They are in every show we've been doing recently. They've got like that huge map of the universe and all that fun jazz. Finally, one last thing is we found a supermassive black hole, and this is a...
First of all, this is the best animation ever.
Best animation ever. So supermassive black holes we thought would be at the center of most galaxies.
Right.
They take up about 0.1% of the total mass of the galaxy.
Right.
But this particular black hole is 14% of the total mass of the galaxy.
Yo.
And we thought that the black holes and the galaxy all kind of formed and moved together. Yeah, screensaver win, as USKO says. Dude, it's epic, isn't it? So we thought that the black hole and the galaxy all kind of worked and formed together. But this kind of might be showing a different picture. So this... because this is 8 billion years old, we're looking at this going, well, how does all of this actually work? Is this a anomaly, or are there more of them like this out there?
Right.
So, yeah.
What's the saying? The more I know, the less I know, or something like that? Like the more I find out, the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know. It's something along those lines. And that's kind of how it feels. Like every time we discover something new and different, we're like, that's so awesome! It totally goes against everything we already thought! But I think that's really cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's fun. So, all right. When we come back, we're going to talk about China and what the heck they're doing and what their intentions are. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
As the most forward deployed citizens of the planet at this moment, we, the first expedition crew aboard Space Station Alpha, we are well started on our journey of exploration and discovery, building a foothold for men and women who will voyage in us far away from our home planet. We are opening the gateway to space for all humankind.
As we orbit the planet every 90 minutes, we see a world without borders and send our wish that all nations will work toward peace and harmony.
Our world has changed dramatically. Still, the ISS is physical proof that nations can work together in harmony to promote peace and global cooperation and reach goals that are simply out of this world.
This night, I'd like to share with all our good fortune on this space adventure, our wonder and excitement we gaze on the Earth's splendor, and our strong sense that the human spirit to do, to explore, to discover has no limits.
Times are hard all over the world, but this is a time when we can all think about being together and treasuring our planet, and we have a pretty nice view of it up here.
Welcome back. All right, so there were a couple of stories that came out of China fairly recently. One is that in response to the U.S. space plane, they could be potentially making a space plane as well.
Anything you knew,
I can do better. And that alone, in and of itself, isn't that big of a deal, right? I mean, we made one, so it would actually kind of only make sense. I mean,
it's not like we own the technology.
nope, not really. And actually, there's a picture of that. If you go to that link, there's a picture of that. I probably should have brought that up in the show, but it's just this little jobbery Jew that sits underneath the plane. And we don't really know. They're not exactly being forthcoming about the project. But the other part of this comes in this particular story, which is JAXA, the Japanese aerospace
Exploration Agency.
Thank you. Rocket information has been stolen via a computer virus, and they believe they traced that back to China.
Ouch.
Yep.
Dude.
Yeah.
Seriously?
So it looks like China is not only trying to copy what is already being done, which, okay, that's fine, but also trying to steal information from other space agencies for what? And
Dude.
we've talked a lot on the show about China and kind of where they're at. And there's actually been quite a bit of debate. Is China where we were with the Apollo program, and how long it's taken for them to do certain things. And it really is truly comparing apples to oranges. And I'm okay with it up until the point where they're stealing information from competing agencies.
Yeah.
Having a good, healthy competition between agencies, not a cold war, but a little bit of national pride's okay.
Competition
right?
and cooperation.
Coopetition, yeah.
Right. I mean, we've seen that a lot. ESA and NASA particularly have a really great relationship, but the Russian Space Agency and NASA have a decent relationship as well. And so, each program is doing their own thing, but sometimes you need to share some resources or some people, or you need to share information, whatever it is. And really, My mother usually taught me that there's no harm in asking because the worst thing they can say is no. So I'm not really sure where China sort of gets off trying to be all 007.
Well, remember, we've told China no a lot.
Well, we have, but
yeah.
has JAXA?
Well, JAXA's part of the ISS, and China has wanted to become
That's
part
true.
of that program for a while,
We've
and we
told
keep
them
telling
no.
them no. So, maybe that was our own dumb mistake. As Vax in the chat room says, they've been doing this for decades. It's not a surprise. It is true. That's true. They have been doing this for a very long time. It's not really a surprise, but it does bring up a valid question of, so then what are their intentions? If they are stealing this information, if they are copying space planes, my hope, looking at the best in people, is that their intention is to, push humanity forward, see what science and technology they can get out of it, maybe a little bit of national pride, but not as a nefarious item. But with actions like this, it makes it feel like, okay, maybe they do have a different agenda. So, and as USKO says, their intention is to look good, but stealing information doesn't make you look good. So this is the point. This is what we would love to engage you guys in, right? What do you think China's intentions are? Are they good? Are they bad? Are they both? What does it mean? So JAXA may have lost some information related to the solid rocket boosters that they use.
Yeah.
What kind of impact does that have? Is that good? Well, it's not good. I don't see any upside to that. But what's the downside? What could potentially happen? And why do they need that? They've got rockets. They're building stuff pretty quickly. They've got new engines they're developing in-house.
China as an entire state, if you will, there's so many people there, and the more people you have, it seems to me that statistically speaking, the more chances of having really intelligent people available to you goes up, right? Like, I have access to, 100 people, I maybe get one genius, but I have access to 1 million people, I get like 3 or 4 geniuses. Like, that seems to make some sense to me. It seems very bizarre that they would then go out and try and steal, or effectively steal, other people's information.
Now, One Kill Wonder. There we go. I got it. Well, it's split in two lines.
Yeah,
it's
sorry
hard
for
to
us.
see.
Sorry.
Says every country steals information from others. If you don't spy on others, others will spy on you anyhow. And then, that may be true, right? It's completely possible that the U.S. is taking information from China. I guess the difference is we don't get caught, or at least I don't hear about it. And our media is a little bit more unforgiving in items like that. But even so, we kind of know what our stance is on everything because we're very open about it. China isn't. So I guess that's where some of the concern comes into play. And I don't think this should turn into another Cold War or a us versus them kind of thing, but it does raise certain red flags for me. And as
an American, like, we have to speak, we can only speak as Americans, honestly. We can't speak for other countries and how they're feeling, and really these are only our personal opinions anyhow. I just want to make that really clear. I don't want anybody else because we do have an international audience, I don't want anybody else thinking like, well, blah, we don't really care.
I mean, I'll be frank, I'm not saying they're doing anything bad, I'm just saying this looks weird when you combine those two stories back to back. And what happened was I was surfing Reddit, I'm looking at this stuff, and I swear to you, the two stories were, one underneath the edge, and like something in my brain went, uh-oh, this doesn't seem right. Something seems really wrong here, and I don't know why. Maybe the two stories have nothing to do with each other, but it just feels weird to me. It feels wrong. It feels like something is up. Yeah. Some bigger agenda is in play. And the easy thing to say is, of course there's a bigger agenda. They want to steal your technology so that they can go to the moon and do whatever. Or they can, trump everyone in space. But my question is then, what's the end game? Right? Are they putting missiles in space? I'm not saying they are. I'm asking a question. Are they going to put missiles in space?
Right.
And if so, what's the point? I mean, you shoot them down. Missiles in space don't necessarily mean that they're better.
Right.
Are they going? I mean, what's the end game?
That's true. We don't really have an international space law of finders keepers, right?
Well, kinda.
Well, but you know what I'm saying? Like, so I mean, if they get to Mars first, like 10 years before anybody else, say they get to Mars, then what? They're going to keep us off of Mars? They're going to keep like the U.S. off of Mars? Like,
sure. I mean, if you establish a large
Assuming
enough base
they
and put
can.
weapons there, you could just shoot down whatever's coming towards the planet.
I guess it's silly. It seems silly to me.
Yeah. So that is the main topic for this week's show: is what is China's plan? What do you think that they're up to?
This will be definitely fun to talk about in the next show.
This will be an interesting, and keep it civil. I do ask, keep it civil, and I realize 9 times out of 10, YouTube spirals out of control into this whatever. But we do have other channels where that doesn't happen. We've got our Facebook channel at facebook.com/Spacevidcast. We've got Google+. Some of my favorite conversations happen on Google+. I'll add that. That's a really long URL, so I'll add that in the show notes.
You can always email us as well. You can email us directly at benjamin@spacevidcast.com, carrien@spacevidcast.com. And you know, it'll be a smaller conversation. But, I mean, if you have a definitive, like, this is my opinion and I don't want anyone else to comment on it, you can just email that out to us just fine.
Our favorite way of getting comments from you, though, are video comments. Post it as a video response on YouTube, email a video response to us, but we love video comments. If you, assuming you're not being a jerk, if you want to almost be guaranteed a spot in the show, video comments, that's the way to do it. So what do you think China is up to? And that's the first part of the question, and you can answer any part of this. What do you think they're really up to? Second part of the question is, does it actually matter? You know, let's just say they're taking this technology so they can go to the moon faster.
Right.
Is that bad? Does that matter?
Right.
I mean,
well, as long as they don't blow up the moon. Ha-ha! Full circle!
All the way around. So yeah, that's what we'd like to know. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about comments from the last show we did, as well as where Spacevidcast kind of wants to be in 2013, some of the plans that we have.
Assuming the world doesn't end, you know.
Assuming that we got, what, 20
days.
20 days left. So
live it up.
We've got 2 shows left before the end of the world. 2 shows before the end of the world, so live it up. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination, and nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving, through the heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking. She's fire walking to be free.
Welcome back. So, should we start with viewer comments, or should we start with what we
let's do viewer comments. Make sure we get to those, because as I know, you can just...
I will ramble on for hours.
Again.
Our first comment comes to us from YouTube. Video comment. Boom!
Hi, I'm Ian Cluft, recording this at the Mojave Makers Shop at the Mojave Air and Spaceport. This is in response to Spacevidcast's episode 5.18, where they were asking the question, why does Mars matter? And I want to change the question to, why does planetary science matter? We can take a look at, several people have made questions or points about exploration and expanding horizons. And there's lots of points to be made, but we have limited time. So I'm going to focus on asteroids and the Moon and Mars. Starting with the asteroids, one can guess that the dinosaurs would have preferred to have had a space program in hindsight, except, well, none of them survived the asteroid impact 65 million years ago. And take a look at the Moon, all of the craters. The Earth is in the same firing line of asteroids as the Moon is. We just don't see as many craters on the Earth because it erases them and erodes them. So one of the things as we take a look for these asteroids out there to learn more about them, and if we found one coming our way, what can we do about it? We have limited time at that point, and we have to, it would be more effective to divert it with a small nudge years or decades in advance instead of trying to nuke it at the last minute. Hollywood got that one wrong. But also, as we learn more about the asteroids, we find that they're economically valuable for mining. And that's an important discovery. And we're learning all these things. And if we move on to looking at the Moon and Mars, we learn things we didn't expect about the Earth when you look at these other planetary bodies. The Earth is a very dynamic environment with weather and erosion. We don't have these things confusing the issue when we take a look at the Moon, and not as much, but a little bit of atmosphere on Mars. And we can take a look at the chemical and geologic processes without these variables, and the science can learn a lot of things about the Earth again. And so there's all kinds of fascinating things. And if you find this interesting, go take a look on the web. There's all kinds of interesting information to browse. And remember to support the science and business of space exploration.
So first off, never change our question. That's not allowed. The question was Mars and only Mars.
That's hilarious that you say that. He said that earlier, and I was like, you're not really going to say that on the show. Yeah, no, apparently he is. So.
Oh, I will.
Good job.
Will. I totally will. But yeah, I guess that comes back to the bigger question that we're always asking of how do you promote space to people who are not interested in space? How does it impact their everyday lives? And that's a few of those things. But what I'm always looking for is a way that it touches you more directly, like really personally. Because saying, we learn about a lot more about Earth and our species when we go to Mars. We've known about global warming, which directly impacts us for decades now, and we still are like, whatever. So if that, I shouldn't say global warming. That's a terrible phrase. I hate that phrase. Climate change. We're going to say climate change. If that is something that we barely care about, then going to Mars is even below that. So we need to find something that is much easier to sell to people, I think. But fundamentally, if you're already a space geek, absolutely, a really good point. Thank you. This comes from Rinse Art.
Sure.
Is that how you say that? All right.
Sure.
Exploration is one of the major driving forces behind technological innovation. Exploring Mars will create technologies that will make our lives easier here on Earth. More importantly, however, it will inspire generations of engineers, tech professionals, and scientists whose know-how will give invaluable advantage to their home country. The biggest technological and economical boon happens simultaneously with the golden era of space exploration, and it's not a coincidence. Yes, and that goes back to my constant complaint of saying we should fund this program because of all the spin-off technologies. The spin-off technologies are good. I'm not downing the spin-off technologies, but if you want the spin-off technologies, then fund those directly. Don't use spin-off technologies as a reason to fund these things. Having said that, I do agree with the point of it does inspire people in science and technology, engineering, math, and the more people you have in those fields, the more that community will rise up, and the more they'll be able to do, and the more amazing products they will be able to create, the better quality of life they will generate for everyone in that community. And the less of those people you have, the lower quality of life you're going to have in that area. So I totally agree that doing things like that will absolutely raise the quality of life. I think seeing some of these aerospace companies that are trying to push the bounds of where humanity is going is a great example of that. Because you look at the communities in which they're in, and those communities are booming right now. And the aerospace companies who are not pushing the bounds, they're just, regular old communities, if that makes any sense. You agree, disagree?
Yeah, I agree.
All right, I'll let you. You want to read this one?
Sure.
All right, ready to go.
He only did that because it's a really long one.
Pretty much, and I knew I would stumble.
Pretty much. So I've been enjoying your show for quite a while now, thanks to the Roku channel, by the way. Woohoo, Roku! I'm hoping you can explain the distaste folks have for the SLS, the Space Launch System, as it were.
Yeah.
Yes, I did have to think about that, sorry. The impression I get is that people think money is being thrown away on the project. From what I understand, the whole point of the SLS, the Space Launch System, is to create a super heavy lift rocket with mostly spare parts and used hardware. 15 spare and used RS-25 shuttle main engines, used SRB segments, etc.
Solid rocket boosters.
Solid rocket booster segments. It seems to me that it would be financially foolish not to use that hardware. I can't think of a cheaper way to develop a super heavy lift rocket, and that is from Mark Trotter.
Well, thank you, Mark. Actually, there are a couple problems. One, reusing old parts from the 70s is actually more expensive, generally speaking, than less expensive. So let's not...
Wait, let's back up really quickly.
Yeah.
The initial concept is a great idea. Reduce, reuse, recycle, all of that stuff. We love that idea.
No.
Yes, in general.
In general, yes, my soda can I will take and I will send it back, recycle it, and melt it back down into a new soda can.
Right. However, using these particular parts... that, again, were manufactured really long time ago, used a whole bunch of times, got kind of crappy in the instance, between here and there. And a lot of places aren't making them anymore. So, in other words, taking your Model T and try to race it on the Autobahn, not gonna happen. Not a good idea. Not a viable option, unfortunately. Does that help?
Well, yes, it is a viable option. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. So, it is a possibility. Well, yeah. And the thing is, there are many better ways to do this. And that's pretty much the problem. The problem most people have with the Space Launch System is that twofold. One, it doesn't have a reason for being. We're going to have this super heavy lift rocket, which is awesome. Where is it going to go? Is it going to go to the moon? Is it going to go to Mars? Is it going to go to an asteroid? We don't know. Well, where's it going to go? What's its point?
It has no defined
destination. So we're building a rocket to nowhere. We're building a rocket without a point, which means the engineers can't really design it for going to the moon, because going to the moon is a little different than going to Mars, and you might want to design your spacecraft differently depending upon where you're going, which means your lift capability would be different. Hard to say. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is engineers did not design the Space Launch System. Senators designed the Space Launch System. There are requirements written into law telling NASA engineers what they are allowed to use from a fuel standpoint. Basically, it's a jobs program. The Space Launch System keeps jobs in certain areas where the old shuttle manufacturers were, and it basically favors those old shuttle manufacturers. It doesn't matter if it's cheaper, better, or faster to do it some other way. It doesn't matter if we've come up with new engineering techniques over the last 30 years that help us improve that. That doesn't matter. It's more important to keep those jobs, and because of that, it drives the price sky high. So this was the problem with Constellation, Ares 1, Ares 5. The Space Launch System is pretty much a rehash of Constellation with less vision for where it's going to go. So it's, in my opinion, it's even less of a program than Constellation was. Although Ares 1 was, we'll leave it at that. So that's my opinion as to why SLS, the Space Launch System, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's why a lot of people in the space community look at SLS and just kind of shake their head, knowing that this is just going to get canceled.
But I can see how on the surface it does sound like a good idea.
When you say, look, we're going to reuse all these parts, it's going to be cheaper
like,
that
hey,
way.
we just have these parts lying around, you guys. They were working just fine 2 minutes ago. Why don't we just reuse them again?
We'll just put them into a new rocket. Yeah.
Right. That idea makes sense. But when you start sort of digging a little bit further, it doesn't.
And Vax Headroom is mentioning in the chat room a project called Sea Dragon. I highly recommend you look that up on Wikipedia. One thing I just learned in the chat room is Sea Dragon had options to reuse its first stage. Sea Dragon would have been the largest rocket ever built, and dwarfs the Saturn V in every regard. In fact, it's so large, they couldn't even build a tower for it. You had to float it out to sea, half submerge it, and then launch it from the sea. That's how big this thing was. It was massive. It was expensive, but it took up so much payload in one launch that your total cost of pound to orbit was really, really low. So anyhow, fun, interesting things. All right, next comment, final comment comes to us on Facebook. It's from Jeffrey. Regarding the Mars debate, I would argue that before looking at other planets to expand after Earth, we should focus on improving our technology to get there, and in the process, slow down the rate at which we consume Earth. I'll let you guys continue reading that. But the general idea being, we don't quite have the technology necessary to get to Mars perfectly safely now, so we should wait until we do have said technology, and once we have the technology, implement it then. And I understand that line of thought, in that line of reasoning, but I wholeheartedly disagree with it. If you want to push the frontier, you need to take some risks.
Right.
You need to be willing to push the frontier, and if you want to get to Mars, then you're going to have to push. And that means you're going to need to go a little bit earlier than you thought you were ready to go. When they announced Apollo going to the moon, a decade before it was ready, they didn't really announce Apollo. They said, we're going to the moon in a decade.
Right.
We did not have the technology to make that go. Straight up, we did not know how we were going to do it. We had not done rendezvous in space before.
Right.
We hadn't done Mercury and Gemini programs before. We had no idea how to make this work.
Right.
And it took that goal and a specific timeline, aggressive timeline to force us forward into that. And look at the amazing technology that came out of that. When we were forced to better ourselves, we actually did. When you say, we'll better ourselves when we have time, you tend to not do it. You're just not incentivized to do it.
Well, and I think that another sort of, to sort of kind of tack on to that, I think a lot of people get very concerned about the possible and likely, especially if we go too fast, loss of human life. And I'm not trying to downgrade humans in any way, shape, or form, but I'm just saying that there are plenty of people out there who understand the risk, prepare for the risks, are willing to accept the risks, and are willing to do this in order to better the entire whole of humanity. I think we've become so risk adverse, right? Like, we become so concerned about, like, well, I mean, I don't know, and it could take a while, and maybe people will die. And when I was younger and didn't quite exactly understand the argument, someone asked me, like, oh, well, when you grow up, are you going to have kids? And I always thought, no, there's too many people on this planet. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm not going to add to that. And I kind of fall back on that line of thinking of, like, no, man, we have so many people on this planet. Get rid of a few. And I know that sounds really cold and really heartless, but like I said, there's a lot of people who have dangerous jobs or who would be perfectly willing to possibly sacrifice themselves. And I know that sounds terrible, but you take a survey of hardcore space geeks and say, hey, if you had a chance for a one-way trip, 99.9% chance of never coming back, and a decent chance of maybe not even surviving there, would you do it? And people say yes. And you might think they're crazy, and that's okay. But they are willing to take that chance. And I sort of feel like you're taking an opportunity away from some of them. You get, I don't know. I mean, I think that's another, like, little part of it. Some people kind of go, whoa, we don't want to jump ahead of ourselves because we might lose some humans. And again, not saying that humans are worthless, because I would never say such a thing. I think that's a ridiculous statement. But if somebody's willing to do it, and we have a position for them to fill,
let's let them push the frontier.
I don't see an issue.
USKO mentioned in the chat room Apollo, because I was using Apollo as an example. Apollo was a set of unique circumstances that will never happen again, or at the very least will never happen in our lifetime again. That is true. I wholeheartedly agree with that, but you can still use the example of...
Actually, that was WIMVO. Sorry, not USKO. Go on.
WIMVO said that?
Yep, go on.
Nope. It was USKO.
Sorry.
So Apollo certainly did, but the fundamental concept of we set a timeline, an aggressive timeline, and we accomplish that aggressive timeline, that can happen again. So the overarching idea is, if we decide to set an aggressive timeline and reach for that, we could actually have the benefits of Apollo without having kind of the Cold War aspect of Apollo. So it's possible to have all the best parts of Apollo and leave the worst parts of Apollo behind. And then we won't have flags and footprints. We could actually do it in a sustainable way.
Right.
It takes a little bit longer to do it that way, but that's really kind of exciting stuff. So those are your comments. We're just about out of time, but I did want to talk about Spacevidcast in 2013. Again, looking for your feedback as to how we should do stuff. Obviously, we've had far fewer shows this year than in years past. So we're considering moving to a monthly format where instead of doing every week, we do maybe the first weekend or last weekend of every month, something like that. Don't know the answer yet. And then supplement the shows with space pods, which you'll know we haven't done at all in 2012, I don't think.
We've done a couple.
It's a small handful. Space pods, for those who don't know, because we've done so few since we came here to California, there's 5-minute daily snippets. And we try to do 3 per week, but... we'll see. Space pods actually take more time and effort than a single live show. But I feel like the space pods make a little bit more sense because they're much easier to digest, they're much easier to share, and people seem to enjoy that scripted format a little bit more. And this would be, the live shows would be kind of a way for the space community to get together, have some fun, and just kind of talk. The second concept I had is not reducing the live shows, but instead bringing in a lot more guests. That was something that we'd done in our second and third seasons more than anything else. I think that was actually a fairly good format. We're just about to the point where we could do that again. What Treble says, 1 6-hour show per month. Thanks, Trebles. Actually, that is one of the problems of the live shows, because we post them on YouTube, and a lot of the YouTube viewers are used to the YouTube 5-minute format. And when you see a show that is 40, 50, 60 minutes, your eyes glaze over and go, really? Can they be entertaining for an hour? And the answer is yes, of course we can.
Duh.
But that's why I think Space Pods. The other point I wanted to mention was when we moved to California, we lost some of our gear, one of them being our nicer, higher-end cameras. We're looking at bringing back some of that gear and kind of increasing that, and that will hopefully happen very, very soon, like this next week. I mean, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's stuff that has
in the next month or two. We do have Christmas coming up.
Whatever. So hopefully that will happen very, very soon. If anyone's interested in what it will be, what we're looking to do is actually create a new live setup. So we'll have a new video switcher, brand new cameras, and a new broadcasting setup. And that will allow us to not only do these live shows, but more importantly we've got these AIAA meetings that we cover.
Right.
We'll be able to, if we don't have bandwidth, we can't cover it live, but we can do live to tape, which means we can get those posted
way sooner.
Yeah, right now it takes months, so we'll be able to do it much, much faster. So these are some of the things that... That was nice. See, that's a perfect...
Our calendar just popped up huge on the screen. We couldn't see anything else
Calendar doesn't want us to do that.
Apparently
Calendars, I thought CamTwist crashed, and I was going to be like, well, that just shows why we need to do that. Yeah, no, all right. I lost my train of thought. So there you go. So that's kind of what we're planning on doing. Love your comments and feedback. One thing that will help us do this is your help with Spacevidcast Epic. Epic is our premium subscription program. That's where you get some of the really long form interviews from AIAA meetings. For example, when we do an AIAA meeting,
or LA Space Salon,
we'll have the guest and we'll show the part up until the Q&A, and that's available for free for everyone so they can see what the speaker had to say. But the really interesting stuff, that's in the Q&A, and that's available only to Spacevidcast Epic subscribers. Additionally, Spacevidcast Epic subscribers get access to the show after the show, which is called After Dark, and that's just another added advantage. And there are a few other programs that we make available only to Epic subscribers, where the only way to get it is through Epic. It's around $10 a month, and what that does is that helps us actually do things like buy this new equipment, and we've actually been saving that and saving that and saving that, so we could kind of do one big huge thing.
Note how we both have like the same shirts we've had all year.
Yeah.
Actually, the last couple of years. That kind of stuff. We've been saving a lot of money.
Yeah, trying to take that Epic fund and really do something awesome with it. So it helps pay for the show, and it helps us do awesome new things to bring space to everyone. So we really appreciate your Epic subscriptions. You can go to spacevidcast.com/epic to look up more information, to subscribe and become a member. We also accept donations. Or if you work for a company that would like to get in front of a bunch of people, we actually have, if you go to spacevidcast.com, scroll to the very bottom of the page, there's an advertising section. We just updated that with recent statistics showing you what our audience numbers look like and a bunch of different packages. It starts at like $100 a month and goes up to $150,000 and everything in between.
We're dreamers.
Oh, yeah, hey, you never know. Someone might do it. So there you go. That's our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for joining. And any last comments before we roll the close? All right, stay with us if you're watching live. After Dark is up next. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week.
Dragon deploy verified.
So you totally heard about the thing where America, in order to beat Russia to the moon, was just going to blow up the moon. It's going to be way easier than actually landing humans on the moon.
Is that a real thing? We were actually going to... We thought we could blow up the moon?
Yeah. Yeah, just obliterate it. That way we would just, nobody, it's sort of one of those like, if I can't have you, nobody can, kind of things.
Welcome to Space Vidcast. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham will be our hosts for this show. We're going to start off with some space news. Then we're going to go into our main topic, asking what is China doing? And then...
we'll be talking about that for the next 3 months.
Kind of. Well... We'll talk about the main topic. And then in the last part of the show, we normally do viewer comments, questions, interact with you guys. But this particular show, we're also going to be talking about some of what we want to do in 2013, some of our plans. So usually that's stuff for After Dark, so we're going to give you just a small taste of what we do in After Dark right here in the regular show. So
Not only that, but that's also the section where Carrie Ann hears about the crazy schemes Ben has been thinking up and not discussed with her at all.
Absolutely. But let's go ahead and get started with some space news. First off, Sabre engine. I love this. For anyone who
These
follows...
are the people who bought Dunder Mifflin, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, go on.
That's hilarious. No, the company is not Sabre. It's Reaction Engines.
Gotcha.
But they are working on a very hard project. I assume it stands for something.
Okay.
Check this out. So this uses the Sabre engines, and what it will do is allow Mach 5, that's 5 times the speed of sound, travel throughout the world. Now, most of that will likely be over the oceans. And that's what you're going to be able to use, another use of this particular engine, the Sabre engine going on this particular vehicle. I wish the...
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of insane.
It's really freaking fast, and B, the plane is huge. It can carry about 300 passengers. Right? And obviously this is all just animation with no sound or anything like that. But yeah, this is some of the stuff that gets me excited about this, right? I mean, this is
long-term advanced propulsion concepts and technologies. Thank you, USKO.
Or LAPCAT.
Or LAPCAT.
So, and here you can see this particular flight plan that you're looking at right now with current air traffic would take about, I want to say it was 4.5 hours, somewhere around in there.
Nice.
So you can basically get around the planet, halfway around the planet in 4.5 hours. Yep.
Wow, and I can't even get from LA to San Francisco in that amount of time.
No, exactly. It takes 8 hours to do that particular trip. So that's why I'm personally excited about this, because technology like this can do quite a few really awesome things.
So we really quickly, we do have some scientists in the chat room that are confirming that there are physics, I was going to say physical reasons, but there is physics reasoning behind the curved engine. And so it makes sense. It's just that at the moment, not at our fingertips. So
there you
that's
go.
good.
Yep.
Thank you.
So moving right along, Ariane, the European Space Agency, there was a bit of debating going on. There was some tweeting and talking back and forth about skipping the next generation Ariane problem, which is getting basically it's an engine that allows us to do something called single stage to orbit, which means oh man, I'm doing a terrible job explaining this. Traditionally, all right, I'm cutting back to me. Traditionally, in a rocket, you've got multiple stages.
Yes.
Right? So you lift off, and you've got your first stage, and that goes for the first couple of minutes.
Well, like on the space shuttle, you had the actual plane-looking part, and then you had the boosters on the side, and you had all of these different parts that kind of would end up falling away.
They would
and
fall
those
away.
are different stages,
They're
right?
different stages, that's correct. And you blow them away, you drop them back to Earth, because you don't want that extra weight to come up with you during ascent. So like a rocket, like a Falcon rocket or a Saturn V, Ariane, any rocket, you're going to see, after a couple minutes, the first stage falls away, the second stage ignites, it does its thing.
And for different rockets, it's different parts.
Exactly.
It's not all, right?
That's
and so
correct.
this would be no folly-downy parts.
No folly-downy parts, single stage to orbit, and highly reusable. The thing, single stage to orbit doesn't necessarily mean it will be cheaper, but it does mean if you build it correctly, you could kind of do it in a plane configuration, and that's what these guys are working on.
It's fully reusable because nothing comes down. Because usually when you expel those other stages, they fall down to Earth
and they die.
And they
go away, with the exception of the solid rocket boosters for the space shuttle.
Right, solid rocket, because they fall in the ocean, right? And so you had to refurbish those every time.
Well, the external tank fell in the ocean too, but it burned up kind of. In this case, it's basically a space plane. So this plane launches like a plane, flies into space, can go to low Earth orbit, which is different than Virgin Galactic. It cannot go to low Earth orbit. That's suborbital only. I believe that's true. I believe it was low Earth orbit. It goes way higher.
That's cool.
And it's still a conceptual engine. So basically the point of it is
часа 28 минут. Масса
choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Touchdown, we have touchdown. Exit home. Start. We have
this engine, and they have now passed a couple of additional tests that prove that yes, this is a real thing. We can actually do this. Now, there's a bunch of money being dropped into this. It's like $15 billion spent on this so far, but this could be, because I've talked about it many times on the show, this could be one of those game changers that changes the propulsion we get off of Earth to help get us out of our gravity well. And even if it can't bring a whole lot to low Earth orbit, if it can just bring a few humans and then we can, from there launch something else.
Just a few humans. Is there like a good reason why it's all curvy uppy like that?
Oh yeah, going back to the shot of the engine. No, I have.
I mean, I'm clearly not a rocket scientist.
I have no idea.
If anyone in the chat room can tell me what the thought process may be behind that, because that's not just like my imagination looking at things. It does look a little
curved,
right?
Yep. So I don't know. So the neat thing about this engine is it basically converts from an airplane engine to a rocket engine, and it just uses the same fuel to do that.
Nice.
So yeah, it's kind of like, oh well, not enough air, rocket. So I'm excited about the Sabre engine. And speaking of, so the space plane we were talking about, the Sabre engine from Reaction Engines, that engine can go into the space plane, which is called Skylon. That's the space plane plan. But they also announced something called LapCat. Check this out. So there is an Airbus A380, which is a freakishly huge plane. Now, I realize this isn't space. This part of the program isn't actually space, but it was really cool, so we're going to talk about it anyhow.
Okay.
This is LapCat. This is basically, if you remember the Concorde.
I know that lap cats are tiny, right? They fit on your lap.
I don't know. It's actually all capitalized, so